What do King Solomon, Muhammad Ali, Andrew Carnegie, Miles Davis, Mike Tyson, the Shakers, and the Oneida Community all have in common? They all practiced semen retention. Stay tuned. I'm just going to give you a brief history of semen retention and some of the ways that it's been practiced throughout the ages from my own experience and research. King Solomon, the Yellow Emperor Qin Shi Huangdi, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, Mike Tyson, Andrew Carnegie, Napoleon Hill, Elon Musk, the Shakers, the Oneida Community. There's a huge list. What all these people and groups have in common is that they practice semen retention. There are three basic methods for semen retention. One is total celibacy, abstinence, no sex, no ejaculation. Another one is to limit how many times you have sex, because that equates sex with ejaculation. And the third one is to separate sex with ejaculation. That's the one I'll talk about first. That actually is the Taoist method. The Yellow Emperor, the founder, Qin Shi Huangdi. Qin is the root for China, what we say China. The founder of that dynasty had 108 wives. And one day he said to his counselors, I'm really tired of having sex, and I'm thinking of quitting it totally. And that's when one of his advisors, a female, Su Nu, said, hey, that's you're not going to live healthy without that. It's not a healthy living. You've got to learn how to regulate your emissions. You've got to learn how to stay strong, stay healthy, and still make love to your 108 wives and concubines and the whole deal. The idea behind, King Solomon as the legendary founder of semen retention, he had 108 wives, and through the basic three monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and the patriarchs, we find about all these ancient people that had multiple wives and harems and all that. They also had to learn how to regulate their ejaculation, how to practice semen retention. In the Islamic world, if a man couldn't perform his husband duties, that was grounds for divorce. And so if you had some of these sultans and the emirs, and they had 50 women in their harem, they had to be able to have relations with them, to be able to consummate. And if they were not practicing semen retention and having all those experiences, pretty soon they wouldn't be able to have those experiences. We look at the view that the sexual energy for men is the foundation of all your power, spiritual power, mental power, physical power. Some schools of thought, they just said, okay, you just have to abstain from any kind of sex, any kind of emission like that. This we find very prevalent in the American boxing. Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, when they had that, I can't remember, one of their biggest fights ever, they both abstained from any kind of sexual activity for a year before that fight. And they both said that, it was the hardest they'd ever been hit, the strongest they'd ever been, and that was their secret. Mike Tyson, who is not only one of the greatest boxers of all times, but an actually fantastic boxing historian, researched of all these boxers that said, you really have to be careful about your emissions, your ejaculation. You have to, save your sperm, save your semen. And, they would always say it makes your legs weak and all that. If you want to see a great movie that actually is going to tell you a little bit about that, I highly suggest Raging Bull, Martin Scorsese film about Jake LaMotta, starring Robert De Niro. That plays into it. There's a whole a scene in there about how hard it was in those days to practice semen retention. If we look at say some religions and spiritual groups, they knew that the semen and the sperm had so much power. They knew you had to keep it, and their only way was to just not have sex and not let any of that come out of their bodies. And so that was the whole abstinence thing, celibacy. We see in modern times, we've seen how well that's worked. That's like trying to put a lid on a big pressure cooker. Or as the Chinese say, the attraction of yin and yang is the strongest magnetism in the world. How can you just say, hey, just don't do that? You look at the Shakers, the Shaker community in New England and upstate New York. They were abstinent and celibate and kept men and women separate, no marriages, no nothing. And when they get into a spiritual frenzy, chanting and singing and all that, they would literally shake. It's from all that energy. They knew about it. There was another community not many people know about. It's called the Oneida, Oneida community in upstate New York. They practiced polygamy, and their whole thing was that a woman's orgasm was a gift from God. And so they practiced abstinence for the men as far as ejaculation, but not for sex. And that is the closest thing to the Taoist way that you can find, like in America, like in a more modern setting. Again, back to the King Solomon, the Persian school, which I learned through Sufism, is called Imsak, I-M-S-A-K. I'll put a link in the description, get you some ideas. Imsak basically means delay. So you can delay for that time period. You're having intercourse. You can delay ejaculation that time, or delay it for a farther period of time. And again, that all goes back to having a harem. It goes back to wanting to be strong as you can and have the most amount of strong, healthy children to carry on your dynasty. That also has a lot of similar practices as the Taoist sexual practices. One thing the Imsak doesn't have is a solo cultivation. Really, in my experience, the Taoist sexual practices is the most complete, because it has a practice for when you're alone, how to strengthen your inner workings, and then obviously the retention practice for when you're with your lover. Andrew Carnegie, Napoleon Hill, talked about the sexual energy and how having a love and sex in your life can be channeled to prosperity and business and a higher life. The list goes on and on and on. One thing for me personally, with learning these arts and methods, the Taoist and the Sufi or the Persian method, and having researched the Western mystery schools and Tantra, and there are many other people that are really researching how to channel this internal energy. In all these studies and people I've talked to and people I've been following and hearing from, I keep hearing this thing about who has won the sexual revolution, or who lost the sexual revolution. In my opinion, revolution is still on. It's still going. We can't claim a winner or a loser or whatever. It's still going on. In my opinion, the beginning of the sexual revolution was when we started to separate procreation from sex. I mean, we are the only species on the planet that can choose when we want to have sex and try to have it for any other reason besides procreation, for love, for pleasure, for connection and all that. I think the beginning of the sexual revolution was for, especially from a religious point of view, was to separate procreation with, sexual feelings, gratification, and pleasure, to acknowledge that women um, not only deserve to have pleasure when you're having sex, but it's kind of a good thing for them too to be experiencing that. It's not all about the guys, and to to get that burden of every sexual act has to be an act of procreation. I believe that that's the beginning. That's what started the sexual revolutions, and I think that's still going. The middle of the sexual revolution, I feel, is learning about all the different ways people love and can be loved. And with all the variations, I mean, we see how many different, variations on heterosexual, homosexual, LGBTQ, all the different ways that people are having sex and loving each other. And I believe that that's it's up and running, and kind of like the same people that only feel that sex is for procreation are the ones that aren't really happy with this wide variety in the sexual pool that we're swimming in now. For me, the sexual revolution won't be done. It won't be over, and we won't be able to declare all humans the winner. For me, the end is when we can separate ejaculation from sex. So I believe that the sexual revolution begins with women separating sex and procreation. And I believe that the end will be when men can separate ejaculation from sex. In Taoism, want you to have sex and make love as much as you can, but not ejaculate as much as you can. Definitely a strict basis on how often, or which season you can do more, which one you have to do less, how to refine it, the whole deal. So a lot of times when I studied martial arts, those masters, they didn't understand how you could separate that. So they basically said to us, don't have sex, no sex, which is similar to like you see in the Western boxing, or some of the religions or spiritual groups, just don't have sex. I do believe that with knowledge and training and understanding, you can separate sexual intercourse, sexual pleasure with ejaculation. When that happens, the revolution will be done. Everybody will be happy. A lot of problems are going to be solved, and we'll declare the human race the winners, and then the sexual evolution is done. So that's just my 2 cents worth on that. I have to be careful what I say and do here on YouTube. Everything's got to be fairly, watered down. But I would like to do a podcast, or maybe a private podcast, and actually get into some of the real practices and methods, and how to channel that energy, how to retain the energy, how to channel it, how to refine it, how to share it. For now, I'll leave a couple of books in the description, and I'd like to hear some of your feedback. If you practice semen retention, if you've practiced the Tao of Love, or Imsak, or Tantra, or you've heard about the Oneida Community. I'd like to hear your feedback. I'd like to hear your experiences, and this is a growing community. People are finding out nowadays that we have this creative power in us, and if it's channeled in the right way, we can be super creators. So until my next podcast on semen retention, and I do owe you another blog, part 3 on talking about sex and these things. Until the next podcast, spread the love and keep the love, and you know exactly what I mean.